Yo guys, Z-Line Underground back again. Thinking I'm about to pull another hibernation? Well, think again, because we'll be talking about improving the IBX. It's been nearly 2 years ever since Governor Hochul proposed the IBX, giving nearly $3 billion as of my last knowledge. The New York City Interborough Express, which is a proposed transit line that would connect areas of Brooklyn and Queens, is still in the planning stages. While there had been discussions and studies conducted regarding this project, construction had not begun. But if I were in charge, how would I change things? Would the IBX be more beneficial if it was rapid transit like the NYC subway? Would the IBX improve more if it was light rail? Or better off if it was commuter rail like the LIRR? First, we'll be comparing and contrasting these three different lines. Secondly, I'd fix some existing circumstances and infrastructure to smoothen out the IBX, strengthening transferability. And third, as a conclusion, I'd propose my version of the line. So get whatever snacks you have, because this is going to be a long video. But before I get into all those juicy details, I just want a random disclaimer nobody asked for. For some reason, I'm getting accused of AI enhancement to speak for me. This is my real voice. I don't get why some people think I speak like an AI. My speaking voice is very different from my normal voice personally. Now, I'm just being serious and locking in. And people just don't expect me to speak this accurate. Do you guys seriously think that lowly of me? But if you really insist that I'm a robot, prepare for me to speak stupidly for the rest of this video.
All right.
Enough of all that.
Yappination.
Yappination. Okay, for real now. Here's a breakdown of the pros and cons of rapid transit, light rail, and commuter transit. Let's start with rapid transit. Here's the pros. Starting with frequency. Rapid transit often has more frequent service compared to other transit options, which reduces wait times effectively. Another benefit is speed. Rapid transit is usually designed for longer distances. Rapid transit systems typically have fewer stops and can reach higher speeds, which makes them more suitable for city-to-city travel. The G train is the shortest subway line if you're counting out the shuttle trains, yet still traveling to a different borough by the end of the day. Another point is capacity. Rapid transit usually carries a larger number of passengers, helping to reduce congestion on roads. Lexington Avenue is reliable enough to carry millions of riders daily. Imagine how hectic things would be if Lexington Avenue were suddenly to disappear. Last but not least is reliability. Rapid transit generally has dedicated tracks. What does this mean? Basically, it just helps avoid delays caused by road traffic, like light rail or even commuter transit. Just hear me out, because I've seen way too many people getting into car crashes due to the wheels being trapped in the tracks in the most ridiculous ways possible. But anyway, let's move on to the cons. A very bad defect about rapid transit is the cost, because rapid transit can be more expensive to construct and maintain than other types of transit. So expensive that the destination signs don't even work properly. For example, the 2nd Avenue subway has already costed over $5 billion to create, and 96th Street is nowhere near the final phase. Another con is urban focus. Rapid transit mainly serves urban areas, which limits accessibility for suburban or rural residents. But then again, since we're talking about the IBX, this is only benefiting New York City alone, not any other outskirt considered areas like Nassau, Hampstead, or Yonkers. A bit ahead from the Bronx, but still. Another problem would be infrastructure needs. Rapid transit requires significant investment in infrastructure, which can be a barrier for cities with budget constraints. This is already a problem because MTA is in debt very badly, which kind of loops back to the point about cost. But I'll talk about how this can affect neither underground or elevated stations. It will still be an inconvenience to those who happen to live around the area the train is being constructed at. This is also known as temporary area disturbance. Assuming some parts would be built underground, some sections would require a cut-and-cover method, which was used in the 2nd Avenue subway. This would obviously close down roads for a while. However, if you built an elevated structure, the cost would be less extreme, but you'd still have some problems. One, like the cut-and-cover method, we'd have to temporarily close off streets to allow heavy objects like cranes or other building vehicles. The only chance you'll have of access of that street is being a pedestrian. Second, we need to build a specific kind of coating material that would reduce noise pollution. In extreme conditions, houses would have to be replaced, rebuilt, or even removed. But this was done in MTA in the 20th century. This is very rare to happen. Personally, I believe the pros outweigh the cons slightly. Sure, you'd still need mass resources and it would disrupt many environments, but due to the level of heavy shift and flow in New York, many pedestrians, drivers, and even bikers have adapted to the inconveniences of street construction on nearby roads and other streets close to them. The most important defect we need to destroy is the cost. Unless if we just magically find a governor that makes things easier for this. In conclusion, all of the pros such as frequency, speed, capacity, and reliability would be more beneficial than the cons, which would only last temporarily. I know this was lengthy. Let's jump straight into the sauce. One of the major pros of light rail is flexibility. Due to this, light rail can operate on various types of tracks, including a combination of streets and dedicated lines, which allows for more adaptability in urban settings. Another one is community integration. Light rail is often more integrated into community layouts, promoting walking and biking connections. In a biker-friendly environment like New York City, I'd understand why a lot of bikers would be biased against light rail. Last but not least, lower cost, which puts the icing on the cake. Light rail is generally less expensive to build and maintain compared to rapid transit and commuter rail systems. You see, this is why I believe MTA is just trying to be cheap on light rail, but I'll get to that later on. Anyway, moving on to the cons. One of the massive cons about light rail is the fact that it constantly lacks speed. The reason why light rail lacks speed is due to more frequent stops and potential traffic interactions. In a crazy, unpredictable setting like New York City, where there are unstable, mentally ill drivers, this cannot be trusted. For a personal story I tell, every time I saw my father driving, he always had to yell at somebody who drove like a crackhead constantly. Hey, even I had to jump in the fight when things went seriously down. You know, we just had our father-son beat down. Okay, I'm getting off topic like really bad. Next up is capacity limitations. Light rail carries fewer passengers compared to rapid and commuter, which might lead to overcrowding during peak times. If an area massively depends on that specific line, especially on peak hours, it could go south. Last but not least, concurrency with traffic. Light rail may be affected by road congestion if light rail is not given dedicated rights of way. To me, the cons slightly outweigh the pros in my opinion. Here's why. You have to constantly worry about potential traffic interactions, which could really mess up the flow of the train frequency. Now, I'm not saying light rails do not have dedicated sections, but the problem is the fact that generally, they have around 50 to 80% portions on the streets. That's halting your potential speed by 80%. And with congestion on New York traffic, this is not happening anytime soon. But before you guys attack me in the comments, I've heard that thankfully IBX will not be running on the streets. Since I've ended my summary, I'm moving on to commuter transit. One of the things commuter transit is best at is reach. Commuter rail is known for serving a combination of suburban and urban centers. making it easier for commuters to reach both areas. As you can see, this is a very key part of the LIRR's purpose. You could also say that commuter rail is better suited for longer distances and trips. Not just long trips, but long trains, adding on to capacity, because commuter rail can handle longer train sets, which may be necessary if there are many passengers traveling in and out of city areas during peak times. Another nice touch would be a simpler infrastructure development. If existing rail lines are repurposed for the project, it could potentially be less expensive and quicker to implement. MTA has done this with the A train, the Afar Rockaway, which used to be at the Long Island Railroad, and the Dyer Avenue line, which used to be the Boston Railroad, on the 5 train. And surprisingly, MTA is doing this right now with the IBX, since their plan is to convert an abandoned freightway into a light rail. With the fun facts out of the way, let's move on to the cons. One of the main jokes about commuter rails is less frequent service. One of the main jokes about commuter rails is the fact that it has less frequent service, especially during off-peak times, leading to longer wait times. For the time I am recording, this is the average schedule of the LIRR. Even as the most popular commuter rail in North America, this can be infuriating to some people. Another is initial commute to train stations. Commuters often need to travel to and from train stations, which adds time to their commute, especially if the station is far away from their home or destination. This can be applied on the Long Island Railroad too. For example, if you look at the routes, they all run but so far ahead. When they're at a certain destination, way too far ahead, they maximize their length at certain areas where another rail line begins, which forces you to transfer on to another line, taking you to your desired destination. Another one is potential for crime. Depending on the location, commuter rail stations and trains can sometimes be targets for theft or vandalism, which may deter potential riders. In a city like New York, especially known for its dangerous crime history in the 80s, some of that crime still lingers on to present times, nowadays. And on top of that, you have to deal with longer headways, which could be more dangerous or risky, especially if you're in a more foreign area. The robber literally has a half an hour to have his way with you. It's literally a setup, man. Plus, robbers usually scout out the individuals unbeknown to them. But if you're in broad daylight, you don't really have to worry about this. Personally, I suggest to avoid commuter rail around like 8 to 10 p.m. when people really start hitting the hay. But sadly, we don't have a system like the Guardian Angels to protect us from robbers on the train. If you guys know what I'm talking about, more power to you. Another last but short one is reliability issues. Commuter rail services can be affected by delays due to mechanical failures, weather conditions, or other unforeseen events, impacting the overall reliability. A very big downgrade about commuter rail is that it's not as reliable as light rail or rapid transit. In my opinion, rapid transit is often seen as superior for several reasons. Number 1, higher frequency. As I mentioned, rapid transit systems tend to offer way more frequent services, making it easier for passengers to travel without long wait times. Number 2 is speed and efficiency. Rapid transit usually covers longer distances faster due to fewer stops and dedicated tracks, making it ideal for commuters seeking efficient travel into urban centers. This ability to quickly move people can have significant benefits for economic activity and reducing road congestion. Third is capacity management. Rapid transit can accommodate a large number of passengers simultaneously, which helps mitigate overcrowding, especially during peak commuting hours. Some commuter rails like the LIRR and Metro North are longer than rapid transit, but the A train is an exception. It runs literally 32.4 miles, assuming the route is from the Rockaways to 207th Street. That's about 8% of the total distance from New York City to the border of Canada from Niagara Falls, assuming you found a way to build a straight line that far. My point is rapid transit can also be nearly as lengthy as commuter rail, but still can deliver an increased amount of flow. Last but not least, urban mobility solutions. For cities aiming to reduce traffic congestion and promote sustainable public transport, rapid transit provides a robust solution that enhances connectivity and accessibility within metropolitan areas. Once again, in a city where you can get stuck easily if you turn towards the wrong streets at a very bad time, this decimates traffic congestion alone. Look, I know I'm being a bit repetitive now, but I really just wanted to get my point out. Even on statistics, the majority of people depend on the subway. Again, we're talking about rapid transit here. This is showing proof that the community in New York City is more used to the complexity of rapid transit, which is the most common way to travel for us. So why not build the same thing that's already benefiting the community instead of trying to be more different and cheaper with the light rail idea? Investments in rapid transit can also lead to increased property values, stimulating local economies as access to public transportation. Overall, while the cost may be extreme and terrifying, the potential return you can receive in investment economically and socially makes rapid transit a worthwhile choice in the long run. Another reason why the IBX should be a subway is because it's so integrated with a lot of MTA's property, especially near BMT areas, which I'll get to later on. Moving on to the main point of the video now. My next point is fixing the circumstances needed to create the IBX. Similar to my last video, I propose an express and local system, creating new bullet signs called the X and Y trains. And no, we're not talking algebra. They'd be installed with a rather cornflower blue background, with a tint of purple, giving it a more violet style, separating it from the other existing shades of blue within the system, like the 8th Avenue or 2nd Avenue line. This new shade of blue would classify the X and Y as more distinct, easily classifies the color as the Interborough line. The Interborough Express is abbreviated shortly into IBX, and plus this line is known for a crosstown line, which makes perfect sense naming it the X train. Meanwhile, the Y train would be the Interborough local train, serving intersections which would strengthen out multiple connections to nearby buses. If you look to notice in the Y train sections, the Y will have an important bus transfer at nearly every station. Starting off with around Bay Ridge, you may notice that the Bay Ridge yard has 6 tracks. Well, let's put that to use. We'll create 3 island platforms to turn trains around even faster, which is kind of similar to the LIRR at Atlantic Avenue. For my next plan, the Y train will connect to the C Beach line through the express tracks, switching to the N train's local tracks, giving the unused tracks some more meaning. The X train does not interfere with the Y at all, with its own separate tracks on the side running express. With this plan, MTA could save way more money by just merging the N and Y trains from 8th Avenue to Fort Hamilton Parkway, instead of wasting resources on building another station next to the N, which would be quite ridiculous. Meanwhile, the X train is skipping all the way to 62nd Street. The Y train will separate from the N train after Fort Hamilton Parkway. Since the C Beach line no longer uses its 3rd track, we can use that space to dig a tunnel which leads back to the X train, on a direction heading to Queens. After 62nd Street, the tracks stay organized like this for a while. From 62nd to Utica Avenue, a one-stop local system would be implemented. From 17th Avenue to McDonald Avenue for a transfer to the F, skipping 9th Street and stopping at 16th Street for a transfer to the Q train, skipping 23rd Street and stopping at Nostrand for a transfer for the 2 and 5 trains, skipping Albany Avenue and stopping at Utica Avenue for a transfer to the B46 Select Bus Service, or the E and K trains, if you watched my Utica Avenue proposal. After Utica Avenue, the X train skips 3 stations, which is Ralph Avenue, Remington Avenue, and Rockaway Avenue, which is kind of like a doppelganger of the A train, also known for skipping 2 stations called Ralph and Rockaway Avenue, making a big jump from Utica Avenue to New Lots Avenue. Once the Y train reaches on to New Lots Avenue, you notice first the IBX tracks fixes its layout, creating another connection around the BMT structure. And secondly, with my updates, the Linden shop will be changed to a maintenance yard. Third, the Y connects with the L, temporarily separating from the X once again. And yes, this means the Y train will be serving 8 car units, while the X train will be serving 10 car units, another similar characteristic of the A and C trains. Since I automatically know the X is going to get a lot of ridership, mixing the X with the L train would overwhelm the Canarsie line. As a result, I separated the X and Y. Now, moving on to a situation that seriously needs to be addressed, which is the ridiculous transfer between the 3 and the L train at Livonia Avenue and Junior Street. A lot of people don't realize that this is actually an out-of-system transfer. Bro, the fare is already $3, so you have to pay again to transfer, which is infuriating. You're paying $6. Like, no, man, no. Not only is it a waste of money, but the transfer method is rather shady. You have to walk through these 2 blocks if you happen to get off the wrong exit on the 3 train. And the giant gates and the stairs makes things difficult to see where the L train is. Second off, you're forced to take the stairs on the 3 train side, while the L train has an additional accessibility access, which is why I believe this transferring method is a bit sketchy. Before proposing the IBX in the station, I want to give some historical context which surrounds the transit system around Livonia Avenue and Van Sinderen Avenue. If you're an MTA history geek like me, chances are you'd know that MTA wasn't always MTA. In fact, it was all 3 companies competing against each other until the city forced them all to combine into one. In this location, 2 of these companies were the IRT, which operates the 3 train, and the BMT, known for the L train. Because of the constant clash between the 3 companies, this resulted in a transfer barrier. Because both companies were so greedy when it came to finances, they required you to pay at their own individual stations, despite how close they were towards each other. This arrangement meant that riders were often directed to only one line without convenient connections to the other, which is why we have what we have now. When MTA formed, the transfer barrier was never truly resolved. For such a crucial line like the IBX, MTA needs to find a solution to eliminate this problem. I'd move the platforms only to a point in where it wouldn't result in the destruction of Pennsylvania Avenue due to close proximity. Also, since the middle track is removed, I'd propose an island platform connecting to both directions of the 3 train. This way, you wouldn't just be able to transfer to the L train more effectively, but the X train, which is under the newly constructed 3 train platform. I'd create a better transfer hub to the 3, L, X, and Y train. And since the old platform of the 3 train would be moved, the 3 train platform would no longer be called Junior Street. In fact, both names for the 3 and L will be intermixed together, renaming the entire station Van Sinderen Livonia Avenues, or Livonia Van Sinderen Avenues. Tell me which one you think sounds better. As a reminder, the X train is built on a different platform, while the L and Y train is merging together. Now let's move on to Sutter Avenue. Now after this, you'd get significant impacts which would improve the L train. First off, the Y would split apart from the L train after Sutter Avenue. And after Sutter Avenue, I would devise a plan that would address the issue of the Atlantic Avenue station in the L train, which is redundant due to the proximity to Broadway Junction. By repositioning the platforms for the X and Y trains, we can create a new mezzanine that connects directly to the LIRR, similar to the setup at Barclay Center. The Brooklyn-bound side would be conveniently situated near the LIRR, while the Queens-bound side would provide access under the A and C line. This redesign would eliminate the unnecessary stop at Atlantic Avenue, enhancing the speed of the L train service and streamlining transfers at Broadway Junction. Now, Wilson Avenue would be changed very majorly. An entirely new express station will be built there for your last chance to transfer to the L, and the last stop of Brooklyn before heading to Queens. You'd also have some really nice views while seeing the layout of Wilson Avenue and the X and Y trains platforms, which is something we don't have on the current elevated level in the L train. After the L, X, and Y trains separate to their respective destinations, due to the potential connection you'd get from taking the Q55 transferring to the B54, which takes you further down Myrtle Avenue to Brooklyn, I propose the X train stop at Myrtle Avenue. The X and Y jump a bit deeper into Forest Hills, eventually creating a transfer to the M train. After Metropolitan Avenue, the X train will skip a lengthy 4 stations, but stops at Queens Boulevard due to many of the potential bus connections. But due to the unusual low population where the rail line is, I'm reconsidering whether the X should skip Queens Boulevard. It's kind of funny that the X train takes you to Metropolitan Avenue, then jumps right to Roosevelt Avenue, which is almost near the next terminus of the M train. Now, as you think this map shows, I'd end this video at Roosevelt Avenue. However, I believe this feels incomplete. You might ask why we can't end the X and Y trains at Astoria. Well, another existing railroad uses those tracks to Astoria, a little after the proposed IBX tracks at Northern Boulevard. Now you might ask, where could we possibly place this final termination? Well, I'd put the final termination at LaGuardia Airport. The Y train will serve Northern Boulevard, while the X train makes a straight shot to LaGuardia Airport after Roosevelt Avenue, which has not been done before. It would be the first New York City subway train to give close access to another plane hub without transferring to another rail line. A better deal you'd get is skipping the $8 fee from the air train at neither Jamaica Center or Howard Beach. This would also result in the enticement of riders rather going to LaGuardia Airport. Let me demonstrate why the X train is faster than the A train. The X train is express, non-stop, all the way to LaGuardia Airport, but the A train is express all the way till Euclid, so it stops constantly, which makes the X train a bit faster, which I think overall is a very strong benefit. All of the problems fixed in one from the invention of the IBX is the ridiculous 3-train transfer, the separation between LIRR riders at Broadway Junction, improving the L train speed by removing Atlantic Avenue due to the X and Y trains adjusted platforms at Broadway Junction, and a more effective route to LaGuardia Airport. Tell me what you guys think about this in the comments. I know, this was a very long video. That would be how I end my proposal of the IBX. Overall, this would be an S-tier subway line if MTA actually considered this plan instead. One of the major problems that would be fixed is the redundancy of the BMT Atlantic Avenue station, the dependency on the A train to take you to a plane through the air train, and third, you'd only be paying through MTA to reach the plane. A crosstown line is already OP, but an express crosstown line, that's overpowered. This is one of my longest videos I've done so far. If not, maybe the number 1. So you know I've been working quadruple overtime. Like if you've just been sitting, watching the video without even considering liking, you're just hating on me. Like come on. One of my next videos, I'll be covering how I'd fix up the Rockaway Beach branch. Then after, maybe the 2nd Avenue subway. If you want the content, you know what to do. Peace out, guys.